Hello, this is Friendly Cat. We're going to be doing a Hearts of Iron 4 research guide as if you only had 2 research slots. This is going to help any country that's doing achievements that has a very limited number of research, but it's really focused on South America, in particular Chile, because the Mapuche only get 2 slots all the way through early 1941. So I'm going to be talking this through as we do it, and running in the different technologies and talking through why we're doing them. So the first and most important research is, of course, infantry 1936 infantry equipment. As we look at the different stat differences, 1936 infantry has twice the soft attack, 6 versus 3, and 50% more breakthrough. That means that it is twice as effective in soft attack and twice as effective in attacking, making it by far and away the most important first technology if you don't already have it. I've seen some China guides where they suggest, holding off on that research to have more of the lesser infantry because of how the efficiency gains and becomes more production. But no, I disagree. I'd say go straight for 1936. That is by far and away the most important tech if you don't already have it. And we'll be considering that comment later on for what we don't already have. The second most is the basic machine tools. It's a 10% efficiency cap for very cheap, which effectively results in about 20% increased protection because your base efficiency for most countries is 50%. So 50 to 60 is a 20% production increase. Very important. And as these finish up, we're going to move on to our next techs. So when those two are done, we're going to check, do we have artillery? And if we didn't, we would take it. Since Chile has artillery, we're not going to take that. And then we're going to move over after artillery is going to be interwar. With our 4th choice or 5th choice, depending on how you look at artillery, we're going to look over at support. If we don't have support, we want to take support because we're going to need that for our equipment. But since we do have support, we can now move on to another choice. For countries like the South American countries, including particularly Chile, and any country that has a naval border that is an option to the Navy, we're going to want to be able to naval invade, so we're going to check transports. Chile actually has transports, so that's pretty cool. That means we do not need to take transports. Move on down to the next list, and that's submarines. Again, if you're a country that has a border to the Navy and you can build dockyards, we want to put those dockyards to good use. Submarines are very powerful. Chile has submarines. We can move on. Well, this is quite a bit of tech for a 2-slot country. Let's move on to air. The minimum air force we're going to make is a 1936 aircraft with bomb locks and machine guns. In this case, Chile already is well along the way. They've got 1933 airframes and bombs and machine guns. Nice job. So we're actually going to start aircraft this early. Okay, so as they start running, let's talk a little bit more about why we chose the interwar tank and then the aircraft. So interwar tank is extraordinarily important, or extremely effective early in the game. For about 35 Army XP, 10 to modify the tank and 25 more to add it as a line battalion. You can increase your armor to about 11, and that puts you over twice the cap of enemy infantry that do not have anti-air or anti-tank, which makes you 4 times as effective. You take half the damage when you're attacking or defending, you take half the damage in combat, and you do twice as much. So when this completes, when we have the Army XP, we would take an interwar medium, slap a machine gun on the front, and then add a slot, one of the specialty slots to increase its armor, and then just drop it on our infantry, our assault infantry when available. Extremely effective. It's going to have not the greatest reliability, but it's going to last for a long time and do a lot of good for us. Don't be deterred by the words interwar. They're still very effective. For aircraft, they're effective in a different way. Not just in South America, but in other countries, you're going to be crossing rivers, attacking into jungle, into mountains. You're going to see 15, 20 days to complete the battle. Well, aircraft do a great job of not only CASing, but they also can defend against CAS and logistic strikes. So we want to start that Air Force very, very early. Now, if this seems really odd that we're doing this early, we only have 2 slots, and we do need to prioritize the most important tech first. I'd rather have more tech. We'll talk a little bit more about what slots I don't tech don't take along the way, but if not, by the end of this video. And here they are, both finishing up about the same time. So let's pause, take a moment, let's look through. And the next tech we'd want to pick up is anti-air. We have anti-air. Oh, nice job, Chile. So after anti-air, we're going to look briefly over aircraft, and we actually get Engine 1s for free. You don't actually need an Engine 1 research to build aircraft, but we like these, but we'll be taking those perhaps a little bit later. What we want is the passive artillery. This seems a little bit late. It's actually not. 10% is nice, but we've got other things we need instead. So we'll take artillery, and then we'll go after another soft attack boost, that is recon. It doesn't show up here, but recon boosts the soft attack of line artillery by 10% as I recall, so we're going to pick that up as well. It also, I don't know if it's clear here, but it doesn't require very much IC. I think it's primarily driven by infantry equipment, so we're going to pick up both of those. Even though we like aircraft, we're going to pick them up. Alright, so why do we like interwar artillery, and why are we taking this maybe a little bit later than some folks take? It's a 10% soft attack, which is really good, and line artillery gives us most of our soft attack, so it's going to be effective, maybe 7%, 8% overall damage increase, which we really like, but we've got other things we just needed first. Recon gives us speed, which is nice, but it also increases the line artillery by another 10%, and I'm not sure if it's multiplicative. It's definitely not additive, but I think it's a multiplicative to the interwar artillery, but still really good. So both very effective. I think speed has long been given a low rating by folks, and so Paradox decided to buff it, and I don't recall whether it is in the most recent DLC or the one before that, but they buffed recon to give it line artillery bonus. Awesome. I was taking recon before anyway, so giving them a soft attack bonus to line artillery is really fantastic. And that's, as I recall, it's not showing up on the screen when you click it, so you would have to look at it within the actual division template. With recon finishing just a little bit ahead of interwar, we'll pause it, take a moment to look through. Okay, what are the different things we want next? And at this point, I'm going to probably make a jump over to range improvements to give our 1936 fighters. I did click the right one, yes. And we're going to start range. We're going to add our drop tanks to our 1936 fighters, and I think even with Engine 1 we can do that. Just to give us range, particularly for CAS, we need to have range, that range bubble just a little larger to CAS. As interwar artillery finishes, I'm actually going to probably jump over and look at trucks. That sounds kind of odd, I know, but we'll talk about trucks in a moment. So anyways, as many of you know, if your aircraft are stationed, let's say there's an airbase here, and the bubble, or not the bubble, excuse me, but the range looks like that, they can only engage in combat within that area, so the drop tanks increases that range out a little bit, so the circle gets a little bit bigger, so they can actually be more effective. They're also more effective in fighting as well, and in force projection, so it's a very good thing, particularly for our fighters. Trucks, I'm already thinking ahead toward mobile trucks. This early, I'm not going to be able to make very many trucks, but certainly we'll be able to lend lease them, and eventually we will be building the truck battalions or truck divisions for movement and encirclement purposes. With that tech complete, I'm going to bounce back over. Let's pick up Engine 2, and as Engine 2 completes, that means our aircraft will be completely up to date. Tanks, submarines, and aircraft up to date with the 2-slot Mapuche equivalent is actually really good. As you can tell, I didn't actually progress down the Mapuche focus trade. That's why we don't have a civil war. I chose the fascist first slot just so I could avoid a civil war. We're just demonstrating research here today. Truck is actually very important as far as not just encirclements, but movement. And when this completes, when we fight, for example, against as Mapuche, we're going to want to go to war with the United States. We can make a 12 width, or the original 6 battalion trucks, add some motorized recon, engineers, support artillery, and they'll fight very well, and they'll be able to move through the United States Army very quickly. Well, we're just about finished with engines 2, and I'm feeling pretty good. We're actually doing pretty well here in 1937. So let's see what we want next. And I'm going to take a personal favorite of mine here. I'm going to actually go for military police. So as that starts up, and we're going to give truck just a few seconds to finish, and I'm going to talk more about military police and why we take it. And I think we might have some time here in 1938 to start talking about some of the other techs that we haven't taken. In just one moment. Alright, so as truck completes, and even though I've done this quite a few times, I'm still going to go slow and steady and look through all of the different things. Okay, have I taken all the ones I really need? I have. Okay, it's October. What else do I really want? Okay, it's October. Let's pick up improved machine tools here. Okay, so let's go after military police first. Military police is extremely effective in any type of a world conquest type achievement run. And Mapuche, their achievement runs and many of the South America runs are effective world conquest where you're taking over large parts of the world. Maybe not the whole world, but large parts. The suppression bonus of 20% means that you are actually spending about 17% less IC on resistance, which means you've got 17% less fulfillment, which is fantastic, but also about 17% less damage, which is also very good. And that first research for military police is actually relatively cheap, so we want to snag it. I know it sounds odd, doesn't improve combat. What about IC? What about production? What about industry? But actually no, manpower is a limiting factor to most of my achievement runs, or at least the most difficult achievement runs. It's not more guns, it's not more artillery, it's this number. And military police helps a great deal in ensuring that I have manpower. I can juggle manpower, I can do all sorts of cool things with it, but that's very helpful. And with the 1938 start, we're going to actually jump over to medium tank 2. Now you may be wondering, why did we take industry so slow? Why are we so limited? It's because really in the most important years, 1938, 1939, 1940, 50% or more of our actual production will come from Lend-Lease. It will come from other countries. In the most difficult achievement runs, I'm not talking about Russia, United States, France, Germany, Italy, but the most difficult runs, when you've got 5 to 10 mils, the industrial techs aren't as important. We like them, we're going to use them, but they aren't as important. As we come out of 1938, we want to look at our next techs. And this is ahead of time. Let's take a snag at this one. We will pick up another industrial tech. Now I talked about interwar mediums and I said how you shouldn't be deterred by them, you shouldn't be worried about them, oh I don't want to take them, but actually basic mediums are better. They have more armor, 20 more armor, that's actually quite a bit. They actually have a little more hardness, but they also have more, actually the reliability here is, excuse me, it's down here, the armor's down here, it's 20 to 30, so it's 10 more armor and then 5% more reliability. So they are better, and once we get 1938 tanks, we may actually pour a fair amount of military experience into them, give them a 3-person medium turret. We'll still give them just machine guns so we don't worry about our reliability, and we'll increase their armor, and that will last us effectively for the rest of the game. 1940 mediums aren't really that much better than 1938s. 1938s are, I think, are better than interwars, but 1940s we do not need to rush to get to them, because 1938s will just do so well. Well, here we're watching the Spanish Civil War. That's kind of cool. I always like watching the little wars, and particularly if we're doing a test run to see what's actually happening. And in a moment we're going to switch on over to Japan. I took the long way around the world, but Japan I think has started its war as well. Well, medium tank is just about finishing up here, and when it finishes up, we're going to take infantry. The game is slowing down just a little bit because we're getting more combat, and that's alright, because that's going to give us time to talk about some of the techs we might not normally take. And now we're taking infantry. Infantry equipment, that 5% really doesn't do that much for us. Most of our soft attack comes from our line artillery, but we need it to take infantry 1, and that's why we were taking it as a prerequisite for infantry, for the 1939 infantry equipment, but we're not rushing it right away. We do not want to be stuck basically with an empty slot, and so we just want to make sure this completes shortly before, or just about the early 1939. Let's take a good, even though I've done this before, I'm still going to take it nice and slow. Is there anything else I'm missing along the way? No, I didn't forget any. I often do. Honestly, in the real game, I actually do forget, but looks like I haven't forgotten today. Alright, so as support equipment with that mere 5% soft attack completes, let's take a look at some of the tech we didn't take, or didn't rush. No, none of these. None of the electronic engineering or the research bonuses. A 2-slot does not take this does not help us at all. It takes maybe 4 years to pay it off, and then a couple of years after that before we actually gain any more research, so it's not useful. If we had a 3rd slot, we would take the research just because it helps a little bit and it doesn't cost that much, but we don't take these until we have 4 slots, and since we're Mapuche, we will not ever be taking any of these. They just do not pay off on a 3-slot or less. I do see some guides that have them taking it because it seems so cheap, but actually, as you see, by the time we get to the end of 1939, to the end of this guide, you'll see we'll actually pretty much be caught up on all the research we really need. Now as we cross into 1939, that's an important year to change tech, but I'm intentionally playing, or doing this guide as if I'm actually playing. If I'm actually playing, I'm not monitoring my tech all that much. I'm not monitoring what year it is. I'm worried about lend-lease and micromanagement, and of course for this guide I'm just chilling out, so I could swap over. So I'm going to pretend like I'm not, and I'm going to let Dispersed Industry 2 just run to completion, even though I probably should be switching over infantry. For the purpose of this guide, it doesn't matter that much, and I want to play this guide kind of how I would actually play in the game. You may also notice that we're not taking MIOs. We aren't. Political power is so valuable. For about 25 political power, you can get lend-lease for a country to get maybe a year and a half of equipment. That's worth far more than the research bonus, even on a 2-slot Mapuche, even on a 2-slot. That political power, I think, is just so much more valuable, in my opinion. If you do want to use it, it's not going to ruin your run, but you may find yourself just with a little bit less lend-lease or a lot less equipment in the field for a little bit faster research, particularly when lend-lease gives you so much. And we're doing so well on tech. Okay, with Dispersed Industry 2, we'll just let artillery finish at the same time. Alright, so it's 1939. We're actually looking pretty good. We'll start infantry equipment 2. And in the real game, I'm like, oh, I should have been keeping a closer eye. Once 1939 swapped, I should have swapped out one of my techs. But it's okay. In the real game, in my actual games, this is how it plays out. Then we'll look over. Okay, I'm still looking pretty good. Still looking pretty good. Okay. And I actually want to pick up these now. I'm actually not going to be using survivability study. I'm probably not going to apply that to my 1936, and particularly those self-sealing fuel tanks or armor plates. I might, but I probably won't. But I want them ready when 1940 starts. So let's just pick them up right now. And the way I'm doing these, as far as in the order I'm taking, is not particularly important. If you really, really want one or the other, you can do things. You can move things around a little bit. You just don't want to be stuck with a research slot where you don't have a good research at that time. But I'm thinking ahead to 1940. When 1940 comes, I've got a lot of really good research. I've got subs and I've got airplane 2, and I'll still only have 2 slots. In the way I play Mapuche, I'll only have 2 slots. So I won't be able to pick up survivability and planes and subs at the same time. So we need to think ahead, even though I'm not going to be applying survivability studies. You might also be wondering why we're picking up infantry 2 and artillery. If I get so much through lend-lease, it's because I do still produce, or still want to produce, upgraded both artillery and infantry. A heavy machine gun is similar to survivability studies. We are picking it up now, not because I plan to add it to my 1936 planes, but when 1940 comes, they'll have bomb locks on the front and then heavy machine guns on the 2nd and 3rd slot. We will be using multi-role, I use multi-role planes, I should say, in all of my actual guides. And as you can tell, we're actually looking pretty good. We didn't take any of those electronics, I should say, in my opinion. We didn't waste any of our research on taking electronics advanced research. We're just a 2 slaughter, but Chile actually starts with a fair amount of research, actually quite a bit for a 2 slaughter. So we're looking pretty good as we come here to the end of 1939. And as 1939 ends, we're going to stop, at least we're not going to continue adding more research. I'll just talk a little bit more about some of the research that we didn't take and why we did not prioritize those. As we know, there goes Poland. I like watching this. I have to admit, I really enjoy watching this game, even though I've played it for so many hours. I do enjoy it. Alright, as infantry 2 stops ends here at the end of 1939, well again every time just make the effort to go through, pause the game. Is there anything else I need here in 1939? And then work your way down your priority list. And so we're actually going to start into dispersed. I think at the higher levels, dispersed is a little bit better than machine tools because of how it affects dockyards, but they're about the same. So if you really like machine tools, or if you happen to be more of an army focused, then that's fine. As we pull into the end of 1939, we're doing really good. Both of those are going to continue to run out, and I know I told you in an actual game, I'm so focused on micro that I just kind of let the text run through and don't worry about it. But when it comes to 1940, that's different. 1940 is a pivotal year. 1940 brings us sub 3. Sub 3 is something like 80% more damage than a sub 2. I know that a 1940 sub does about 80% more damage. It has a third torpedo slot, which is a 50%. Increase, but also the torpedoes do more damage. So I really, really want those. 1940 also brings us aircraft, the next gen aircraft, and at that point our 1940 aircraft can not only do more damage because we'll be adding machine guns, but also better range, better agility, and that's the beginning of our real tech, I don't want to say supremacy or superiority, but our tech advancement. So as we come into the end of 1939, in the real game, I would be watching that date very, very closely. Sometime in December or certainly early January, I would do just what I'm doing now, pause it and swap out. Do a quick check through. And I didn't miss anything along the way, because sometimes I do miss things, and I was like, oh my goodness, I forgot to take subs. Oh, I forgot to take transports. Who knows? But in this case, I'm just checking through. Nope, I didn't forget anything. So let's swap out. And let's swap out to subs. And we're not going to hit speed 5 anymore. We're just going to talk through. The point of this was to show us what it looks like through the end of 1939 and to give you guides on different techs. After airplane completes, we would then drop on over to engine 3, and then we would be done. I mean, once the airplane completes, we would give it an engine 2 and give it its equipment, and then later on research engine 3, and then we would be up to date with aircraft, and actually toward the end of 1940. For subs, we would take sub 3, and then once that completes, we'll take snorkel, and we'll be up to date with subs also through the end of 1940. And after that, it's really, I'm not saying it's up to you, but it's always up to you. I might take artillery, and then include infantry, but you're also getting your third slot in 1941, so you'll be fine. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the techs that we didn't take. I already discussed why we don't take these. The third slot I take that, but we don't take these until we get to fourth slot, and the purpose of taking these isn't necessarily to give us more overall research, it's actually to let us go faster on the research we need, to go faster on the subs and the aircraft, not necessarily to start taking more research, which I know sounds kind of counterintuitive, but so it is. Some of you might say, oh, Friendly Cat, oh, you're way off. Didn't you read a guide? Let me send you a link to how radio is so cool. It is cool. It is cool. Radio, the coordination, coordination does improve your damage. But I just want other things. The other things are just more important in a 2-slot run. In a 3-slot run, or certainly a 4-slot run, we would pick up radio. But a 2-slotter, we're just going to focus on other things. And as you can tell, we're still not completely even caught up on our industry as we go into 1940. I see a lot of folks I'll see a lot of guys take infantry weapons, supported weapons. I think that's a very poor choice, respectfully to those folks. It improves defense. Infantry already has plenty of defense. It improves infantry breakthrough, but infantry battalions don't have a lot of breakthrough, so this doesn't really do a lot for you. We win this game with soft attack first, And secondary with high armor, a defense, I mean, breakthrough does help. Breakthrough does help. Don't get me wrong, it is nice. A 2 slot would never take it. A 3 slot I would never take it. 4 slot, I don't know. I might take it. Depend if it's a it's a major. And a 5 slot I probably would. Once I get up to 5 slots, I probably would eventually get down here. But it's very low value. We would eventually pick up. Trucks are important. Special forces, prior to the recent Special Forces nerf, I did Marines. All of my special South American countries were in Marines because those are so good. Or were so good, excuse me, were so good. I think this was like a 10% soft attack bonus. We got all sorts of Special Forces modifier, or Special Forces cap contribution, which let us build whole armies out of Marines. But with the nerf, I don't take Marines. I haven't seen very many guys take Marines. I think we all missed that window. So be it. For support companies, notice we didn't take maintenance or logistics. Those are both pretty decent, but they really come into their own with 1939 tech, which makes them a little bit expensive for a 2 slot. Interesting enough, the original is 120 days, and then the second is 143. That's kind of pricey. Maintenance is not useful, I think, pretty much at all. For almost every country, it's useless as a 1936, and it's too expensive for a 2 slotter. 4 slots, I might go one route or the other, and I prefer logistics. But again, 1936 isn't going to help us that much. It's only 10% supply reduction, and I'd rather spend, as you can tell, even with all of our tech catch up, I still prefer industry. We don't need Australia. Obviously, we don't need war austerity trains or armor trains. And I did forgot, as I skipped through, we do need trains. So if we didn't have them, we would have picked those up along the way. Some people take basic engines. We don't need those because we're going to put those on infantry, and infantry don't need it. Basic armor protection. This is actually pretty useful, and in another world, maybe sometime in 1941, I would pick this up. I would prioritize it. I just couldn't get to it on a 2 slot because I like welded armor, and we like to increase our armor for our tanks just to push them over 2 times those anti-aircraft German divisions. We want to see armor pushing into the 20s, 30s if possible. And these techs help us get there. For artillery, I wouldn't advance down anti-air. Maybe on a 5 slotter, I might. Or if I'm just really air deprived, I'm fighting in Germany that's 3-4 times my air power, I might. But really, the first level anti-air is just fine. We will eventually advance down there. I don't advance down rocket artillery. It just, the way the research worked, in my difficult single player runs, I never have the research for it. Anti-tank is useless for single player. All of this, not all of that, I'm not even highlight this. I mean, pretty much all of this is worthless. We just do subs in single player. For naval support, we need transport. I will take, where's torpedoes? I will take torpedo upgrades. I didn't for this guide, again, because of how limited we are in research, but in those times when we have a 3rd slot or a 4th slot, we will, once we have 50 naval XP is very cheap, we would pick up magnetic detonator. A 20% torpedo attack makes subs really better, much better. I mean, they're already great, but they're just that much better. For air, we just took those. We didn't take, I wouldn't take torpedoes if I didn't have them. We wouldn't take aircraft construction, any of those. Again, all we really need are these 2 and then this tech. And I think that's what most of the guides that I see people take. I don't see people spending a lot of time on torpedoes. We wouldn't take cannons, machine guns, and particularly heavy machine guns are better, in my opinion. I already talked about research, of course. I don't see a lot of people taking this, so I'm not going to talk about it. For industry, we're going to deal with this stuff last. We don't take these. They're very expensive, and once we get into the United States, and as a South American country, you absolutely can get into the southern United States. That's Texas, the Texas oil fields. This becomes worthless. Once you have Texas, this is just worthless. And this is kind of useful. Excuse me, this area right here, the rubber. If you can't get into rubber, but once you get into rubber, that's useless. And as a South American country, you can do it. I think most countries can eventually get into the rubber areas of Southeast Asia. And until you do, it's just really expensive for the amount of rubber you get out of it. So I can't think of it as a single player achievement that I've done this regularly. Maybe like Romania or Ottoman Empire, I might have gone down this route. You know, when you got the research slots. Construction, again, in a 2 slot, I wouldn't touch it. In a 3 slot, I probably wouldn't touch it because once we get into war economy, we have a 20% military factory construction speed, and that devalues construction. The primary purpose of construction for me is to build military factories and a lesser extent dockyards, and that is helpful, but it becomes less worthwhile, not worthless, but worth less as you move up into war economy. I like it, but I just most of the difficult single player runs I don't take it. I don't take excavation either. But these are useful. The reason we're kind of delayed on these is, like I mentioned, because Lend-Lease will give us most of our production. I'd rather have a more advanced infantry weapons and artillery and aircraft and subs and a little bit less, or sometimes a lot less, infantry equipment. Excuse me, a lot less overall production. Well, that just about wraps up this run. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it makes your run a little bit easier, and I hope you're a little more confident when you're playing Chile, playing the Mapuche. If you're worried like, oh, if I only have 2 slots, what am I going to do? I got you. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to leave in the comments. If you have any suggestions about things you'd like to see, feel free to let me know. I hope you have a great day.